So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have this little short video about regarding the future of the WEDF. This is Frank joined alongside Ochadex Josh, and
Hello.
Josh, I know you have a big announcement regarding your commentary as well as Homer Matt Eichhorn.
Mm-hmm.
Want to tell everyone why you have decided to step down from commentary?
Well, basically, the idea behind it is this. Long story short, you can't be the franchise and be the voice of the WEDF at the same time because no real main eventer you ever look at it, say it like Hogan, Cena, Austin, Rock, Michaels, Taker, all of them never served double duty as active commentators and main eventers. It was either one or the other. And while most of them did go on the main event, it's just the point is you can't be a commentator and a main eventer because if one of these said main eventers who's a commentator becomes a world champion, you lose the sense of reality you have with the product and nobody can believe anything because then you start wondering, commentators like Michael Cole and say Jim Ross and Jonathan Coachman, all the guys in the past who've commentated before, if there was a commentating world champion, somebody would be like, now, wait a minute, why is a commentator a world champion? You're going to sit here and tell me that this guy who just sits behind a booth is the top guy in our company. No.
And this is the difference in commentator Ochadex and wrestler Ochadex. This is basically why we never saw an Ochadex and Miz program take place because Ochadex was actually a commentator in a commentator's desk on Raw.
Right, and if you were going to go with that storyline, realistically, the only way you can do it is if you have Miz win because it's just a one-shot, one-off angle. And I know all the WEDF fans out there are thinking, no, you're still the Intercontinental Champion. You're this, you're that, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, on SmackDown, on Raw, I'm just commentating.
Basically, yeah. And to all of you who want to bring up CM Punk was actually injured when he put on the blazer and commentated on Raw.
Exactly, because guess what happened when Punk healed up? Right back in the ring he went.
Exactly. And also, I think you had a little bit of this on your YouTube channel about these new commentators that are commentating Raw. Some of them are kind of shaky. Some of them need some practice. Practice does make perfect, and maybe you could bring some tips for them.
Well, yeah, I figured that what I was doing with the whole commentary tips is I think it's just going to be a long, ongoing process because there's a lot I could really help say to these new commentators. So basically, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and lay out my thoughts to the new commentators. Kevin, I see mostly all the commentators you've gotten, Frank, are all heels, which is a good thing because we do need more heel color guys. Kevin is a good guy. I think he has potential to be a great commentator. The only thing that I just think that's wrong with Kevin is that it's not that he doesn't have a personality. It's just that sometimes, and this is the problem I really have with Homer's commentary too, it's just that sometimes you can be overbearing. But at least, you're not going to sit there and say, well, this guy sucks. He's a nerd, this and that, yada, yada, yada. Heel commentators, what you need to do is you need to back your heels, but you also need to give credibility to the baby faces because as the commentator, you're trying to get these guys over. You're not trying to get one more over than the other. You're trying to make both of them look good. Although you might favor one more than the other, you're not. You're just gonna sit there like, say, if I was commentating a match on SmackDown with, let's say, for example, CM Punk versus Shawn Michaels, and I was told to be the heel, I would be talking up how Punk is the best wrestler in the world, but I would also give credit to Michaels for being a legend, for being a great competitor, for being a multiple time world champion. Just say,
This
well,
is
even
why JBL is such a good commentator.
exactly. And the other thing about it is that JBL also had his favorites. He never was completely one way or the other. Like, I noticed he didn't really like Rey Mysterio because there was personal feelings there, of course, but
He hated the Miz.
he hated certain heels. He gave faces props, and he loved certain heels and hated certain faces. He was just basically he had his favorites. That's how it works.
Also, something that's been improved on, like if you don't like someone, like, best thing to do is not completely bury the guy, which is also what I've done the past two.
Yeah, just call it straight. Just call it straight. I know
Like
you don't like
just
somebody like
just basically ignore everything. Maybe just call the match and let the other guy talk more about the other guy. Like say Santino Marella, the guy's a goof, but you could put over the other guy. Could just let's say you don't like Santino, for example.
right, and you don't have to just say Santino's a goof. You can say, yeah, he looks goofy and he does goofy things, but this is where somebody would turn around and say, well, look, you also got to think he was a former television champion. He once had a semi-successful tag team with Daniel Bryan, where he showed, he actually does have the talent in the ring, but he just doesn't have the focus to apply himself and elevate himself to that next plateau. That's exactly what you have to do there. And I just think for Kevin, though, you got to focus on how to be a heel without being too overbearing or going too much to one and not enough to the other.
Well,
Um,
well, then again, none of us were really that good whenever we started out. The person who I thought really had it down pat the most whenever he started was either H.A. Duke or the Super Dingoes, where they were actually into it at the beginning when they started commentary.
True, but anyway, that's my thoughts on Kevin. Matos, Joseph Matos, that guy does not ever commentate ECCW. He is too good to be commentating the developmental third brand. He needs to be on Raw or SmackDown. He's a great guy. I'm glad you found him, Frank. He's a great
And he will be moving over to Monday Night Raw as the color
abs
commentator.
absolutely. That's great. He's a great pickup. Uh he's got the clearest voice out of all of them. He's the one who really sounds
Most,
into the match. I think he's
he has a league out there, I believe SCA.
he does have a few call projects out there, and that's the other thing about it is that he's had some experience, he's had some time to really develop, and I think he's
Now
a good guy.
Kevin also has a league, which is also basically why I chose him over a lot of other people who put their name in the hat over on the Facebook fan page.
Right, and that's the thing about it that I think you got to look at is who's experienced, who's really out there doing it, which is why I think, when you found Loudon, that was a good pick. Zach Shore really impressed me for never really having been commentating anything. He really just came out. I still remember the first time I commentated with him. I'm like, this guy's good. Keep him. I wish he'd come back to commentary some more. But anyway, Matos, the only thing I would have to say is you got to cut down on the insider references. You still have to present a believable, realistic wrestling product, and nobody is going to buy into a guy who's just sitting there saying,
He's
all these
burying
insider
him.
terms.
Oh this here comes John Cena. He's gonna bury this guy up next. Basically, those what
Yeah, you don't say you
you've
don't
made those references. I've made those references.
we all have, but we've come to the point now where we just understand that's taboo to do that. Especially when you don't see, people in commentary going like, "Oh, he didn't do the job. He just made the other guy look good." That's his job. He's supposed to make the other people look good, but that's okay. He's still the main eventer. He's still the man. He's still the franchise. You don't do that ever.
That's like kind of smarky.
Right.
But anyway, speaking of green commentators, let's get to Bernie.
Oh my God. I noticed there's a lot of people who
I
don't.
had to basically, I showed you the notes that I had to give him on commentary. If it wasn't for those notes, he would be basically speechless on commentary. And it's
Well,
true because Carter looked like he had to carry him on commentary.
Well, here's the other thing about it. I think with Burmy, I think not only is the shyness a problem, what's the problem with him is that his commentary sounds for it. Really, to be honest, Frank, as soon as you saw what he was doing, as soon as you saw him when you were giving him notes, that's when you should have pulled the plug right away and said, "No, Burmy, you're not going to work out." Because that's the thing that I think people need to understand is that I get what Burmese trying to do. He wanted to help, he wanted to do it, but really, dude, you got to work on it. You can't be shy. The commentary, you're just talking to a computer screen. I mean, who else is there?
Well,
You're
basically,
alone.
this is another reason why I'm returning Flame. Maybe I can use Flame as a show to maybe help build commentary confidence up.
Yeah, well, Flame can also be just your whole typical one-shot web matches, which is why I think you need to just go ahead and do that as a sort of tryout for the young commentators. And then if it sounds like the reception is good on Flame, move them up to United, see how they do, then keep going from there.
Also, I would like to bring up that we'll be having commentary teams. So I'm thinking about Raw. We'll have me, maybe Carter and Joseph Matos, depending on how the three of us work together. If not, it'll be me and Joseph Matos because I think the two of us work together. On SmackDown, it'll be Carter and Ronnie. And on ECCW, I think I'm not really sure what to do yet with that show. And then again, Loudon can fill in from time to time. Now, Matt Eichhorn is also in the same boat as Oshajax when it comes to commentary.
Right, because I think Homer probably sees it the same way as I do and just figures, I'm doing it. I'm making my move. I don't know. I wouldn't know if he asked you first about it, but I know I had it on my mind for longer than just now, and I knew this day was going to come. So
But we've already talked about it too.
yeah,
Now, Smokey might commentate soon again too, but he might be in the same boat too. Like if he ever moves up to the main event again.
personally, I just feel like anyone who's an original call that commentates, that's in a league, they shouldn't commentate. You're either going to be a competitor or you're going to be a commentator. You can't do both. That's just my view.
But anyway, speaking of ECCW, I have a huge announcement regarding the Land of the Elite brand. At the end of season 3, ECCW will be coming to an end.
Again.
This time for real. Would you like to explain a little bit why?
I would have to guess, if anything, I guess it's a good move. I think some people are going to miss ECCW, but then again, you guys, I think, will probably understand why Frank did this. I know the reason he really did this is because he feels like doing ECCW is just really, it's filler for the most part. Nobody really cares for it. Nobody really sees any big interest in it. All it really is, it's not the lack of talent, I don't think,
No,
that
not
gets me.
really.
Because even then, it's just, you could still book all those guys. I could, if I had the CCW roster, if I really wanted to try to make a compelling product. Um, the point is, though, for Frank, it's just that it's eating up into his time, and of course, shows are going to come out faster now when you get rid of ECCW. Raw and SmackDown are basically going to be the main two. That's going to be how it is, and that's always how it will be. And really, the season will just progress a lot better now with the removal of ECCW.
And United will be staying. And we'll have the occasional Saturday night's main event since those are going over real well, I think.
Last one we did had everybody really like what was going on, so
So
that's a good point.
basically, along with ECCW coming to an end, I'm sure y'all know that Summerfest was very fucking long.
Pretty much.
5 hours. I couldn't believe it was 5 hours until I was got all those matches put in one file. Like I thought it was going to be a lot shorter than that, but nope, it wasn't. Well, that.
Uh, Go ahead.
But what I'm trying to do now is make the show shorter, have less filler. Because some of the matches could have been like blown off on the big shows, like maybe like a big super show.
Right. Uh, Me, I think, the thing I didn't see wrong with Summerfest was just that,
It was a
we've
big
had show
event.
we've had it's a big event, and we've had shows this long before.
Well, those were WrestleMania events, and WrestleMania 2,
No, even Summerfest before now was this long.
it was 4 hours.
Yeah, exactly. But the point is, I think we ran with it because number one, it's a big event and we can get away with it because we don't do this very often where we have this long of an event. But then again, at the same time, me and Frank both looked at the card. I especially looked at his side, and I know a lot of his had some matches that were slapped together on the month of the build.
Daniel Bryan versus Chavo Guerrero,
Bingo.
Brock Lesnar versus Undertaker specifically.
Right, and mine had maybe a couple weeks to about months of build in advance. I don't know.
I think the U.S. title
Most of
match
them.
could have gotten a little bit better because it was it didn't have exactly right like a bam build together. I mean, yeah, Caldwell was on the roll, beating JBL and Christian. Was
And Kozlov was also added in to stop JBL shenanigans. Where it's like, okay, if you're going to do that, fine, but I'm going to add somebody else in the match so that way we have an even playing field.
Regal versus Barrett was another question mark, but you said put it on the show since it's been built so big.
Exactly, and that's the other thing about it that I felt like it should have been on the main show because this is something that people have been witnessing for months between Regal and Barrett, and I'm pretty sure the smart idea would be to put that on your big show when everybody's been waiting for the one chance where Regal and Barrett would get together in the ring again and clash over the title.
Exactly. But really, Summerfest, like the whole planning of the shows, like WrestleMania 2 even had matches like Rohu versus Sin Cara. Would you, no offense to both people, but you gotta think like like a moneymaker. Who would you want to pay for that match?
It's not even that, it's just also more of you're having these matches added on the month of when really what you could be doing is like I think Elliot, I believe, YouTube user Elliot Videos One. I'm just gonna call him Elliot just because that's what it says here. He said, very good point, which is you gotta determine which of these feuds stay on Raw and SmackDown and end on Raw and SmackDown, and which of these go to pay-per-view.
Right. Basically, I'm looking
I,
at WrestleMania 2. Smoking Wu-Tang Man versus Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase was kind of settled there. We never really saw anything else after that.
right.
U.S. title match, that was settled. The last match was at Lashing Back. We saw the a couple matches that I think could have been cut from the WrestleMania 2 card was the Vivian versus Battle Royal, I think.
That could have been a pre-show match, actually.
R-Truth versus Wade Barrett could have been a pre-show match. Although Ty was super hyped for that.
It's because it's Ty.
And Sin Cara and Rojo Mexico was probably the other one. So all in all, WrestleMania 2 could have been a lot shorter than what it could have been.
Right, but I think it still turned out good in the end. The other thing I think we both would like to point out in the end anyway is that even if Summerfest was really long, I think there's some people who can agree with us that the build for this Summerfest was better than the build for a lot better than the build for last year's. Because at least the big matches we all had planned out, we had months in advance.
That's right. I mean, last year's Summerfest, Alberto Del Rio Rey Mysterio was built from the draft. Kofi versus Batista was kind of built up because Kofi was going over the animal who felt like Kofi was an undeserving guy who was moving up the card. DX versus NWO was alright. But it's like, actually, the Summerfest, original Summerfest, actually, I'm looking at the matches and they're not really that bad. Like, there's not really, I didn't feel like there was like filler here, but I think a lot of the card could have been built better though. Like Rob Van Dam, Kurt Angle, Zack Starr versus Christian, C Nation, and Big Show was kind of thrown together.
True.
But anyway, yeah, we're trying to focus more on the builds and cutting like filler matches on pay per view because no one would really. You want to see the biggest matches you can have that people want to see have a feud end on the big stage rather than something that might continue. For example.
There you go. I think that's the best way you could have put it there, Frank. Because I'm even looking at the original Summerfest card right now myself. I'm actually looking at it because I know some of these matches had some good build, and I know the other ones were thrown together last minute or just week of and not really had a lot of advanced build. But then I look back at this year's Summerfest card, and I can see from about, at least from my side of the card, I can tell I had matches really built up, I think, a little before. I'd like to think I did anyway. But I think from, if we're not counting Lesnar versus Taker and Danny versus Flair, from about Joe Icorn down the card, everything was built up well.
Kofi Ziggler was, in a way, built up.
But it still just felt like a filler match.
Yeah.
Lesnar and Taker and Danny and Flair could have been filler, but at least you can get away with those because those are two big matches that'll still give you some good draws.
And Danny versus Flair, actually, the build began on the 4-year anniversary show.
Oh, yeah, well, shit, that began way before now. That's right.
So, really, that's when it really started. It wasn't really brought up until Danny Jacklett started making claims about being the best, and then Flair calls him out.
Yeah, well, even if you were going to run with that and use that as an excuse, some people will point out to you, well, why wasn't Flair more involved in what Danny was doing?
Oh, I just thought maybe since Flair and Shawn Michaels were affiliated with each other, that could help sell the feud.
True, but you would also have to still get Flair involved, which is why, of course, like even for me to have Cena versus Sting, while in the midst of having a program with Truth, if I'm going to have Cena versus Sting, I got to have Sting somehow involved.
Right, and that's why I think where I could have done better with Danny and Flair, maybe have Flair be more involved with Danny Jacklett rather than just one thing at the 4-year anniversary show.
Yeah,
like how during the road to WrestleMania, even I had Mark Henry and Abyss actually stare each other down backstage a couple times.
Mm.
I mean, even at the Royal Rumble, I think was when the first stare down happened.
Yeah, I guess that's another way to put it, where it's just subtle references, and then it just finally kicks an overdrive, and here we go.
Kind of like the whole Ryback Mark Henry thing in WWE right now.
Yeah, true. But anyway.
But we're going to try to cut the whole filler and maybe have shorter shows. I'm trying to aim to have Raw and SmackDown be about 90 minutes. ECCW United about 60. Think that'd be a good idea. Pay-per-view is about 3 hours.
Pay-per-view's about 2-3 hours, maybe.
WrestleMania can get away with 4 at the most. I don't want to do any further than that. Any longer than that.
Right.
More structured card. And speaking of getting rid of the filler, why don't you talk about brand exclusive CPVs returning?
Brand exclusive CPVs. I feel like I was the one lobbying for this too, because I know Frank wanted to do a lot of integrated pay-per-views, cross-brand pay-per-views, where both Raw and SmackDown had their own cards. But then I looked at how everything was going, but then I'm thinking, well, why not? Why are we doing this? Because even though you can do the cross-brand pay-per-views every now and then and get away with stuff, it's just I'm also thinking, well, how can you get a better build out of this? How can you get a better build for everybody on Raw and get everybody on pay-per-view a little more if we're just gonna go down to cross-brand pay-per-views and only have 4 matches from each side? That means only a few certain guys are making pay-per-view each and every time while everybody else is struggling on Raw or SmackDown. trying to get that exposure. And then when you have like the same guys and the same spots on pay-per-views, then when a new guy comes in, it's like, what the fuck is this shit?
And then this is what I think might have hurt the Dream Team Booker Team Rob Van Dam's feud, because they were put off for some time because there really wasn't enough time to build the program up to have it end on a pay-per-view.
That, and I just kind of didn't know really how to get my way out of that. Because I just kind of like forgot about everything and kept putting them on United, and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing?
Right. But also, this is I would like to also bring up with ECCW ending. I know there's a lot of titles on right now, but I want to know about your opinions of maybe keeping the European Championship from the people in the comments.
Um, if we're talking about me personally, I'd get rid of it.
That's what I was probably considering, but we'll see how it goes. People were talking about maybe having a united championship, but I don't think that will work out too well.
No, no, no. You could, but here's the thing about it. In that case, you might as well just make United the third brand. In that case, you might as well axe United, keep ECCW, and then everything stays the same. Do you really want to do that? I don't think so. I feel like things are fine as they are, and if I think you're trying to get rid of filler, United's been a staple and it's been treated like a superstars or, you know,
Not all the time, because
well, not we've had
we had that long ass King of the Ring first round tournament match that Wally commentated.
right, and you said you wanted to use United for that, but I'm like, why would you do that when you can use two separate shows to build this up?
Right.
That was my whole point in doing that.
But anyway, also we're going to be easing into pushing more of the younger talent, which means some of the legends might be on maybe hiatuses or breaks. They won't be used as much as they were in season one and season two when WEDF was more about dream matches and getting those out of the way, then soon transitioning over to the younger talent, pushing them, which is why you saw programs like Stone Cold and CM Punk, John Cena and The Rock, Hulk Hogan and Stone Cold Steve Austin, Hulk Hogan and John Cena, and Hulk Hogan and CM Punk.
I personally feel like it's going to be a good move that you go down this path because now it feels like WEDF will finally get its own identity, if you know what I mean. Because I know a lot of people have looked at WEDF as just a fantasy book WWE, which is fine. Sure,
It's
we could.
kind of like how Mr. Hurricane has finally gotten control of his UTSA uh, dynasty on the NCAA 13.
Right, that and it's basically anybody who's just had control of their own universe. Give it your own identity, give it your own feel. Don't act like you're trying to do what WWE and TNA are trying to do.
Just
Although, of
let it
course,
fly. Just let it fly and make it splash.
you come up with your own ideas, and hell, if you take some ideas that
And I
other
tell you what,
promotions,
I am not Chris Smooth, baby.
nobody is. But I think if you just take ideas from other federations, that's fine. But I think there's a big difference from being inspired from an angle and outright writing this angle down on paper, erasing the original names, and putting in your original talents there, which I don't think anybody would have. I think everybody would just have problems with it, which is why I also had a problem with O'Shea Jackson Ryder going exactly like Undertaker versus Jeff Hardy in a ladder match, and Triple H, or not Triple H, Goldberg versus Undertaker going like Triple H versus Undertaker, and so on and so forth.
Although the match turnout from Goldberg versus Undertaker was, I thought, came off real well.
Yeah, it did, but I think everybody can look back at the build and say, this would be a
Some
lot
some
better if it
some
didn't remind me of this.
some things were changed up, but some things stayed the same. Like the whole stare down at the beginning. But then you saw legends like Ric Flair get involved, saying talking to Goldberg.
Right, but then of course it's just like,
I mean, if I really wanted to copy it, I would do end of an era: Goldberg versus Undertaker with Sting as the special guest referee.
uh,
And obviously, that won't happen.
obviously, but I mean, still, it's just you gotta also just not do something 100% exact. Like I know people will look at me and say, "Well, you did the same thing with Cena and Hogan with the Rock thing, and how they booked the match a year in advance." Yeah, but that's been the only thing I've taken from it. Now I'm not gonna have fucking Hogan and Cena ripping into each other about some stupid shit.
Unless one of them turns heel, which we'll see what happens.
Well, of course,
Or maybe
I know
it
what
might be.
happens. I've had this written down for months. What happens? If you're crazy if you think I'm just gonna spell it out right here, right now.
Well, we'll see what happens.
Anyway,
So yeah, basically we'll see maybe like people like Shawn Michaels, The Rock, Undertaker, these legends used more in a like special attraction capacity.
basically, it's all about a youth movement.
Right. And this is why you saw maybe we'll see Rock here and there. This is why Rock is basically on the break right now.
There you go.
Because if The Rock was on SmackDown, he'd be up in the title scene with CM Punk and maybe hurting his momentum or Ziggler's momentum or Kofi's or uh,
I don't know if it's necessarily about hurting momentum as it is more about, can you really do this with Rock right now? Or can you wait with him? Wait to
right.
build him up for a bigger event and get some draws. I would say make some money, but seeing as we're all doing this for free,
Unless you Wade him.
yeah, let's not go there. Anyway,
So we're trying to focus more on the youth movement, pushing younger talent. Uh, I know a lot of you have your favorites if you want to be pushed up. Tell us why you haven't really pushed people like Zack Starr, for example.
basically for a star, and star in general, I know a lot of people are just saying, "Man, Zack Starr's not a waste. Why is he not getting the big push?" There's a big problem when it comes to that. Let's look back at what Zack Starr did in season 2. Oh man, what a great run Zack Starr had, doing absolutely nothing in the mid card.
He was basically what Eight Jericho said, jobbing to the up and comers. He was like a put over guy.
Right, and I know everybody's gonna sit there and say, "Man, Zack Starr's he's not he's not a jobber. He's a thoroughbred. He should be going to the top." I understand people are saying push Zack Starr. Here's my response to this: it's coming. Be patient.
You just can't Jack Swagger him and expect success.
Right, because you all know what happens if you pull the trigger too soon. It might not work out. And I know a lot of people would probably welcome it.
Danny Jackpot, Royal Rumble, and his first title reign.
Bingo. That's why I'm trying to take my time with Star, because I'm also seeing this as, I'm seeing the whole Dream Team angle as not only just a way to build up AJ Styles, I'm seeing it as a way to help Zack Starr gain back some of the credibility he lost
I
with
think
season 2.
I think Star needs it more than AJ, but I think the two work together real well.
Right.
Because AJ's been kind of like overlooked in reality.
That's the other thing about it, and that's the thing I just saw it as. I just saw it as two talented high flyers getting together and forming an alliance. And then what happens when they work well with each other? You might have a great team on the hands, and we know how a problem for us has kind of been the tag division in a way. So the more help you can get for the tag division, the better.
And that helps because we'll have non-tag team title feuds going on. And then when the time is right, we can have them maybe challenge the congregation, whoever the tag champions will be.
Hey guys, you know what that would be called? That would be called establishing importance in the tag team division. But anyway.
And so basically, you'll see people like Christian and Hulk Hogan, JBL. I'm reading down this list. Rob Van Dam, Booker T. These guys are going to be kind of Triple H and maybe just fading away more. Just not used as full-time workers. Well, let's say you wanted to have a Triple H versus Ochadex program, you could have Triple H come back and you can build that program there and you just help have Triple H put over Ochadex or someone like that.
I know, and the other thing I think about it is just, the way you're doing it is what the way I think a lot of people would want to do it if they had, control of what Cena would do. And really, to me, although I would be the only one who would probably keep Cena full time because I can just still see him working full time as he is because, he stays healthy and he's not really injured as much as you would think he is. But the point I'm trying to make is this, treat your big stars like your big stars. Save them for when you need them.
And you'll see what I'll have in plans for people maybe like The Rock or maybe Shawn Michaels. I mean, look at how Ziggler, sure he's stuck in overdrive right now with Kofi Kingston. I'm thinking this program between them will help elevate both of them in a way. I don't want to push Ziggler too fast. I want to go slow with him. But I want to help Kofi rebuild some of back his momentum too.
Right.
You get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. You're basically saying make the moment meaningful for Ziggler. It's like, guys, let me put it to you like this in perspective. What would mean more for Dolph Ziggler? Having a memorable feud built up to a big pay-per-view match where he wins, or say he has a 3-week program that ends on Smackdown, and who cares about the finish because it's on Smackdown, and even though he beats this big guy in a big match, he'll still go into a pay-per-view to face another main eventer and lose.
Randy Orton versus Dolph Ziggler last year on WWE SmackDown. Yeah,
Basically, if Ziggler's going to be the thoroughbred, you got to build him to be the thoroughbred.
right. And also, you'll see Rey Mysterio probably fade away somewhat. I mean, you'll see more importance in who we want to push more.
Right, and I think what Frank is trying to say, just the long story short, is long story short for Frank Dog here is the older talents and the big stars. They're all going to slightly have a less. They're going to take a diminished role in helping some of the younger talents get over
Because we've
with
already
you
seen,
guys.
look at what Hulk Hogan did for CM Punk just alone.
And Punk didn't need it though. I think Punk was over enough where he didn't really need it. But I think it's just more of, you know, you and Zach, when he was originally booking, y'all both finally did him right.
Well, yeah, winning the World Heavyweight Championship at Summerfest after like a long struggle to the top.
Right, but you also figure in the credibility of the opponents he's faced, the rise he's had all the way to the top, the momentum he's got, the moves he's making. You finally do it right instead of saying, okay, we're going to go with the fans who pick massively over CM Punk in a well favored straight edge society. Um,
to
stable.
discontinue a Stone Cold versus CM Punk program, which
Yeah, you
kind of
give him
was.
the WEDF title just to continue another program he's got with Austin, just so
And
you can get
then John Morrison cashes in Money in the Bank because CM Punk did it twice in a row to Jeff Hardy in real life.
right, and that's where I'm like,
CM Punk gets karma.
maybe in hindsight, you should have waited to do it.
I just thought at the time that
I think
CM
we
Punk did it
both.
twice in a row to Edge and Jeff Hardy.
I
So
think we
what
both.
Punk get a dose of his own medicine.
I think we both at the time thought it was the right move to do, and we both found out how well that went, and then we find out how he's doing this season. And I think we both and everybody here can agree that season Punk has been a better year to be the year of Punk than anything else.
And trust me, I wonder how we're gonna hear the rest of it over on SmackDown.
But anyway.
So hopefully, with ECCW coming to an end, maybe we'll even cut it before WrestleMania 3. I mean, we'll see how it goes. There's some big programs I want to finish, mainly Batista versus Ryback, which has gone over. But perhaps I could do that program on SmackDown.
So many things you can do right now. Because I think what you ought to do at ECCW is you ought to give them one final show, Frank. Because I think at this point, you could probably go ahead and end it. Because I don't think anybody really has any valued interest in ECCW and what ECCW is appearing to be doing.
And we've got one of the programs on ECCW was the Boogeyman and Vito versus Heath Slater and Jinder Mahal.
That's the other thing I think there too is that Slater and Mahal aren't doing anything. Why are they under contract? Why are they acknowledged as under contract if they're jobbers? Jobbers shouldn't be under contract if they're going to be jobbers. That's just how it has worked. Always.
Whoa. There was Funaki.
Yeah, but Funaki also had some wins here and there. And was used in some storylines.
So maybe the best decision now is maybe to end ECCW after Scars and Stripes.
Just let it go. Just give them one final show. Build it up as a CPV. Build it up as something that would be a good name for the final show that ECCW has done, and just go from there. And then after that, from there, I think personally, after Scars and Stripes, and really I think even more, we could probably both even just after a big show, we could both take a look at our rosters and we could cut the guys we don't want, trade over between who we do want. You know what I mean? Just cut the fat and get down to a roster that we both can agree on. Because I think another problem I think some people have told us about in the past, but I don't think it ever really dawned on us just how much it is. You know, if we're really going to go in this direction, then I think the best move for us would be to cut down the roster even more to where it's at right now. Because currently looking at WEDF, we have about what?
About 90 wrestlers.
90 wrestlers? Seriously?
Yeah.
Fuck. 90 wrestlers. Yeah, for a company that's going to use two brands, we need to probably cut that down to about. I say we got to give about half the roster its walking papers. Just about half the roster needs to get their walking papers. That's my view.
But we'll see what happens. We'll probably end up doing like a private chat sometime down the road and discussing that.
Well, of course, but I think it's best that we bring this up now and say, look, if we're going to go through with this change, then I think it's best that you guys understand with us that Even though we have 90 workers now and we have so many workers, we want to get down to a product that I think everybody here will like, with workers that generally everybody likes. We
Right.
cut the fat and we get down to a product and a roster we both agree on, and we go from there. And I guarantee you, a
I'm just
company.
looking. I'm just looking alone at the ECCW roster of who I could cut, and the Motor City Machine Guns. The reason why they were cut, there was
We had,
just really nothing for them, and they really couldn't take over the tag division where there was other big name tag teams running around owning the tag division.
they were a good tag team. I personally could have used them, but it is what it is, and there's nothing much we can say about that. They're gone now. They could come back. You never say never on certain things, but the thing I think we need to do personally is that, let me put to you guys like this. What do you think sounds better to you? A company with 90 wrestlers varying in talent or overness or charisma or whatever, or a roster with about, say, 40 to 50 guys, which if you split it between Raw and SmackDown even, that's about 20, 25 workers per brand. 40 to 50 of the best talents that me and Frank can both agree on.
Also,
40, 50 of the best talents all in the wrestling world in this company.
I'd like to inform you that Mr. John Laurinaitis, the Executive Vice President of Talent Relations and the ECCW General Manager, has wished Curt Hawkins the best in his future endeavors.
Plus, there are a lot more cuts we can make too. Curt Hawkins would be just one of them. There's a lot more, personally, looking at that list that I can make right now. Especially at my own, I could probably look at Raw, and if Frank will allow me to have control of Raw, I'd like to make those cuts. As far as, who can I get, who can I do, yada yada, or not who can I do, not like that, but who can I sign, who can I cut, who can I send here or wherever.
And what those cuts could lead to other names possibly making their splash in WEDF next season.
There you go. That's another reason I would say go ahead with this massive overhaul when we can, and we could do it right now if we want, really, because I think we're both in a position where it's just we've planned out everything so much in advance with most of our guys. It's just everybody else is expendable.
Right.
But anyway, that's the point I would just like to make. It's just that, guys, think about this. A company with 90 to 100 workers, all varying in different skill set or whatever,
Now
or 40.
some of these guys are going to be those part timers next season. They're going
Some of
to be
some of them will. Some of them will be taken off the active roster, but they'll be kept in a special section. But we're just not going to acknowledge them as, the current modern best talent. Or would you like a company with 40 or 50 of the best workers from WWE, TNA? Hell, we could even look in the independents if we want, or we could even look in Japan, because I have had some interest in signing one particular talent, and I think Frank's talked about it a little bit from Japan.
three.
But still, think about it. If you guys really support us,
Actually,
actually what?
84 superstars.
84.
87 counting the talent not signed to a specific brand.
87. Still 87 workers on the roster.
I mean,
That's
these
still
guys,
about
these
30.
guys can still be used, but they won't be considered wrestlers on the roster. They'll be maybe in the alumni, kind of like how WWE brought like guys like Tommy Dreamer back for one night only or something like that.
Yeah, right. There's still 30 or 40 workers we can give their walking papers and send them on their way. But still, if you guys really support us and you support this direction, we understand. I hope you understand, and we thank you if you
I
do,
mean,
because
some of y'all, I'm sure people on the Facebook fan page have said, I enjoy watching Boogeyman and Vito compete because WWE give him a rightful chance.
there you go. And that's the thing I think we also need to think about too, is just that I appreciate a lot of people who say, they like this because they don't get to see certain people act this way. But the other thing I'd like to think about is just that at the end of the day, me and Frank both want to agree on a vision, not just for us, but for everybody in the WEDF to enjoy.
Right. Now, there's a couple on SmackDown, like Ric Flair. Really, he's not really a SmackDown competitor.
Yeah, like the thing I'm just thinking is, why are these legends who don't really compete considered talent?
I mean, even Hulk Hogan, like to a certain extent, maybe the Wiki page can have an overhaul too, where they can have a separate section for alumni and maybe like legends, like a legends section, to where like they're still on the they're still under contract, but they're not a full time wrestler.
Right. You wouldn't consider them in the modern WEDF that I think both of us want to go for. Me especially is just, would you consider guys like Flair and Austin as, part of the best modern current talent we have on the roster if they would just be used as a part timer or just as, a short term draw, you know? I think the big point here is that we're coming at is that we're both looking at everything that's going on in WEDF, and I think we have to see the huge changing of the guard.
Right, and basically the Royal Rumble 2 and Royal Rumble 1 was basically a showcase of the Immortals, like seeing all the biggest names in wrestling history compete in a Royal Rumble. If you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's the way you put it. It's just that I think it's more of also you saying.
It's the end of an era.
I wouldn't say it's the.
It's the current day superstars in the same ring with the legends of the past.
Right, it seems more like you're trying to take the idea of WWE All Stars and apply it realistically. When I think both Frank and I are now moving in the direction I at least want to anyway of a wrestling product that's current, modern, and something different from what most people have seen. Even though it's still going to be treated as, big WWE company. But it's just also, I don't want to make this whole we're ripping off WWE or we're ripping off TNA type thing. I want WEDF to eventually grow to have its own identity.
And maybe we'll see titles get more meaning. A lot of you have been saying that maybe the Intercontinental US titles can be defended more on SmackDowns and Raws, for example. But anyway, there's to wrap it up. That WEF is going under an overhaul, and we're going to see a lot of changes over the next couple months.
Whole lot of changes coming your way.
I mean, we've seen commentators and people saying they miss the WEF of all, but sometimes you got to let go.
And I think if anyone really supports this move and supports us, they'll appreciate us in the long run. And those fans who've missed the WEDF of old will learn to grow to appreciate the WEDF of new. And we both just hope that every one of you out there will understand our vision and agree with it and will 100% fully support us as we turn WEDF into a dynasty and make a better change for the future.
Anyway, for Ochidex, aka Josh, this is Frank Dog. Good night from WEDF. We'll see you. We'll maybe, hopefully, have Raw and SmackDown up this week, and we'll see how I'm feeling. But anyway, also Bucks.
Also buds.